Well, here we are. We're in the garage. I'm just going to change the brake pads on the BMW. I know that they were a little bit low the last time it went in for a service, and I've been to Spain since then, so I'm just going to get them changed. And I was going to bring you up to date with things. I feel okay. I'm pretty good at the moment. I had a meeting with my consultant the other night, and good news, I'm cancer free. I can't tell you what a relief that is, really. It was massive at the start. It was such a big thing. I had no idea. I had no idea that I had cancer. No idea. I'll go back to the start of the story. So this happened, I found this out on January the 9th. And as a lot of you know, I'd already had hip surgery just prior to that. That was on November the 21st, I had hip surgery. Before that, I received my little envelope through the post from the colon nurse at Lincoln. And I mean, anybody who gets to 60 should get that through the door. If you don't get it, you need to chase it up. And so anyway, I did that, sent it back in, and I didn't really expect much to come of it at all. But they contacted me not long afterwards and said, look, we've found blood in your specimen. It's nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it. It happens quite often. But we would just like to check you over and give you an endoscopy. So, okay, fair enough. It's not really what I anticipated, but you know, the screening program is there for a reason. You know, just if you get that through the post, just bloody do it. Do it, send it in. I was asymptomatic, like I said. There was nothing wrong with me. And so I couldn't go, because I'd done that sample before I had my hip surgery. I then had my hip surgery, and then it would have been impossible for me to lie on my right side. You start off on your left side, you shuffle over onto your back, then you might have to go onto your right side for them to be able to do the endoscopy. I couldn't do that at the time, so that got pushed all the way back to January, the 9th of January, which is the day I found out, obviously. So I went in on the day of my appointment, got changed. My wife took me in because just in case you need any sedation. I didn't need sedation. It's not as bad as you think. It's a camera up the bum, but it's not as bad as you think. So I went in, introduced myself, got changed. They went through all my paperwork and everything, and then they took me around to theatre, started the endoscopy. And I mean, I've worked in theatres for 20 years. I've assisted with lots of endoscopies. Some people find them uncomfortable. Personally, I didn't really find it that uncomfortable. And then during the course of the endoscopy, as the camera, so it goes up the left side of your body up to the splenic flexure, which is on the left side just under your ribs here, and then it comes across the transverse section and gets to the hepatic flexure and then goes down into the cecum. So it was when it got to this point, the hepatic flexure, that all of a sudden, perfectly fit, healthy bowel until it got to that point, and then all of a sudden this mass appeared. And I knew instantly what it was. I knew instantly. It just wasn't. It just didn't look healthy at all. It just looked big and veiny and nasty. And the theatre team, who'd been quite bright and cheery up to that point, all of a sudden went silent as well. Which is, you know, everybody had seen it on the screen at the same time. And I said to the surgeon at the time, so what we're looking at here? And he said, look, he didn't answer me to start with. And then I said, so what are we looking at? And he just said, look, let me just get to the end of the endoscopy and then we'll discuss it. I knew what it was. I said, I know what I'm looking at as cancer. That was a bit of a shock, you know, lying there while he finished the endoscopy, you know, being wheeled out of theatre. The team had gone quiet. The girls who took me back to the ward were quiet. They were brilliant. And so I got changed sort of silently. My wife had gone off for coffee. They called her back. They took some bloods from me, and the senior nurse in charge came and said, look, we're going to get you round for a CT scan. Hopefully we can do that today. So they did. So they did the CT scan same day anyway. But before that, we had to go into the room and have the talk with the surgeon. And I mean, it's pretty obvious it's going to need surgical intervention. I had to wait for that team to have a meeting, their multidisciplinary team meeting. And that took 2 weeks. And at this point, I didn't know what the result of the CT scan was. And that was playing on my mind to the point where I was having a bit of a crisis. I was... because I didn't know whether this was the end. I didn't know how involved this tumour was. And it's really quite a thing to go through when you don't know what you're facing, whether you don't know whether this could be the end of your life or the treatment, you know, the start of treatment to something that is going to kill you. So anyway, that took 2 weeks before I found that information out. When I found that information out, it gave me hope, because it hadn't spread anywhere else. There was no metastases to any other organs. There was a worry that I was worried that it might have spread to my liver, given where it was. But it hadn't, and it hadn't spread to anywhere else. That all came up on the CT scan as clear. So the next plan was for surgery. And because of where I work for a private hospital, and I've got private health insurance because of my job. I knew a good surgeon, and I discussed it with him, and then it was planned for when was that planned for? The 27th of February, that was planned for, robotically, which the surgeon drives. It's not, when I say a robot, it doesn't do anything itself. It does everything under the direction of the surgeon. The surgeon operates it, if you like. It's like a glove puppet for a surgeon. Anyway, I had the surgery. The anaesthetic went well. The anaesthetic was perfect. I had something called, so I had a spinal injection to numb me from about here down, so I would have been comfortable afterwards, which I was. And I had something called TIVA, which is total intravenous anaesthesia. So you don't get any of the nasty, noxious gas to keep you asleep. It's all done through a vein. And I woke up clear as a bell at the end of it, felt absolutely fine. Went to intensive care. So the next morning, I woke up, I felt great, felt really good. And the nurse who was looking after me said, well, you can have a yogurt and you can have a cup of tea, which I did. And eventually, around lunchtime, they shipped me out off up to the ward. Thought they got rid of me because I was doing so well. I felt great. I'd been for a walk round with the nurse, obviously, because I felt pretty shaky still. It's major surgery. Don't get me wrong. It's not anything simple. You know, this is why ITU overnight was necessary. Within an hour of being on the ward, a friend of mine came up from theatres to visit me. She took one look at me and she went, "You don't look well." I'd gone grey. I'd gone all. Everything was starting to go black in my peripheral vision. I I didn't know it at the time. It was just odd. I couldn't work out what was happening. So Sam went and got some assistance. By the time she came back, I just looked at her and I said, I think I'm going to pass out. The next thing I remember, I woke up and the entire crash team was there. There was doctors, nurses, there was people putting blood pressure cuffs on or taking them off, I can't remember now, putting ECG dots on. The crash trolley was there with the defib on it. I mean, totally embarrassing. And then the next day the decision was made to take me back down to ITU, where I spent the next 7 days. It was pretty shit. I have to say, it was pretty shit. I had to have another... So they'd already taken the arterial line out that they use for blood pressure monitoring while you're in surgery. I'd had a catheter in. They'd taken that out as well because I was doing so well on that first morning. They had to put another one of those in. They had to put another arterial line in awake, which is not overly pleasant. Through that week, I just deteriorated really quite badly. I've never felt that ill, that weak, that awful. And for the whole time, even though I'd had a cup of tea and a yogurt on that first morning, that was all I had for the next 6 days. They just fasted me for the whole 6 days. Basically, the bowel doesn't like being handled. And it had just gone to sleep, basically. It couldn't deal with anything. I got a build-up of bile, fecal bile, on the wrong side. It wouldn't pass through because the bowel had just stopped working, and I was vomiting that stuff up. In the end, they had to put a tube, a nasogastric tube in, which goes up your nose, down into your stomach. That is just the worst thing I've ever had done. The worst thing I've ever had done. But that was the magic bullet that turned things around. So eventually, after they managed to decompress all that horrible stuff out of me, eventually I was sent back to the ward after 6 days and then discharged. I can't remember whether it was the next day or the day after that. I was in a right state. I'd lost so much weight. I got drips on either hand, and then they failed and they had to go into my arms. But for the whole time I was just on fluid. There was no loads of antibiotics as well, loads of other different shit going into me. So yeah, I spent six or 7 days on intensive care altogether. Came out feeling much better by the end of it. All of a sudden it turns a corner. When your bowel starts working again, you all of a sudden start to perk up. You do feel a lot better, and I did start to feel better. I was incredibly weak, and all the physio and the hard work I'd done with my hip to get my hip right before I went in for surgery, the muscle just wasted away while I was in ITU, and I ended up back using a crutch again when I first came out. That was really sore. I'm still struggling with that now. This is just over 4 weeks on now from the day of my surgery. But things are getting better, you know, things are getting better. And like I say, I'm now cancer free, basically. That was... So the blood tests that they'd done, and they'd looked at the specimen that they'd taken. Basically, they took half of my bowel from the middle of my transverse colon all the way down to the cecum, which I said in the last video, all the way up to the small intestine. They'd taken all that away. So they biopsied that specimen and confirming what we already knew, it was definitely cancer. But fortunately they'd taken a big enough margin, so the margin into healthy tissue was big enough, so they'd not taken any, they'd not left any cancer cells behind. The specimen that they took a lot of lymph nodes with it from that side, and the lymph nodes that they checked, they were cancer free as well. So that's good, because that means that cancer cells hadn't escaped into the rest of my body, into the lymph, through the lymph system. So that's where I am at the moment. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank my Patreons for sticking by me. Thank you. Thank you so much. With this video, this is the start of me getting back to normal now. I still can't ride, I still can't drive for another 2 weeks following the surgery because I'm not insured. Basically, you once you've had major surgery like that, it's 6 weeks, no driving, no riding. So once I get back on the road, believe me, I'm going to get back to making videos. I've been bored shitless, basically. I've had nothing to do. I've not felt like doing anything either. That's the other thing. So I apologise. But yeah, I'm going to get back on it now. Big Bertha here, Roxy, is going in for a service on the 9th. So I could have had the brakes done then, but I just thought I'd already bought these brake pads when we came back from Spain, so I'm going to bang them on now. Save them doing it and charging me BMW prices, eh? Thanks to everybody who commented on the last video. There's a lot of people affected by cancer themselves, or there was one guy who thinks he's got cancer. I've said to him, you don't know until you get tested. You just don't know. He's convinced he is, in his own mind he's convinced that he is. I've just told him, look, just go and get yourself tested. There's no way that you can know that yourself. So he's gone to get himself tested. I hope he contacts me back and lets me know how he's getting on. Yeah, if you're out there, if you watch this video, please just let me know how you got on. And other people as well who've been affected by cancer. There's one guy out there with terminal cancer as well, who was just so made up that I'd made that video and I'd started talking about it, and I was telling people to go and get this stool test done. If you get that through the post, get the bloody stool test done. If you notice anything about your bowel habit, if you feel like there's something wrong inside you, just go and get it checked out. I know that it's a nightmare trying to get in with your GP at the moment, but just go and get an appointment, get checked out. It's just so important. I was, like I said, and I keep saying it, there was nothing wrong with me. And even the day before I went in for the endoscopy, I was saying to a friend of mine at work, oh, I've got to go for an endoscopy tomorrow, and they were like, why? What's the matter with you? And I said, oh, it's nothing. It's just to rule everything out. I'm sure everything's going to be fine. I was more shocked than anybody that I'd actually got cancer, and it was a hell of a shock. It was a hell of a shock. It's a hell of a thing to come to terms with, your own existence, and that you might not be around for very long. Hopefully I'm going to be around for a lot longer now. I'm on a 5-year follow-up now, so I have to have 4 blood tests a year. I have to have 2 CT scans a year, so I'm going to glow in the dark. And I also have to have 1 endoscopy, a camera up the bum, every year. So that's something to look forward to. Just to rule out that I've not got cancer again, that it's not cropped up anywhere else. I can put up with that. I can put up with that. It's not that big a deal. Let's put it that way. It's not that big a deal for the peace of mind that I'm going to be well. That's the most important thing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's made you think. For any guys are normally the worst. For any guys out there who get this envelope through the post and then ignore it, do not ignore it. You girls as well, everybody, make sure that you just do that test. It's dead simple. You just send a little bit of poo off and they analyse it, and then they'll let you know. They will let you know. Most of the time there's not going to be an issue at all, but just do it. Just do it for your own peace of mind. You don't want to get miles down the line and find you've got something that's actually inoperable, do you? You know, and these screening services they're there for a reason. Look at Jade Goody. What happened to her? Because she just didn't pay any attention to the cervical cancer screening. She didn't make an appointment. She didn't go in and have a smear. And she died. She died as a result. Don't do that. Don't let that happen. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon. Thanks for being there.